Hey guys, RYOBI released their new 7¼ inch HP brushless circular saw. This should be the most powerful 7¼ inch circular saw that RYOBI has released to date. It does use 4 pins back here, so you're going to want that HP or high performance battery to use this. We're going to go through some different batteries, show you how it performs with them. We're going to take a look at everything here and how it stacks up. And we're also going to tell you what else you're going to need to buy when you pull this guy off the shelf. Stick with us. Here's a close look at RYOBI's 18V HP brushless circular saw. Model number on this is a little bit longer. It's PBLCS300B. And the new HP stuff seems to have this new numbering system with it. And I'm going to encourage you to look in the description. I'm going to have a link to another saw that is a direct competitor of this that we're going to kind of mimic the testing through and see how everything works. Now this has a 0 to 56 degree bevel with no detents, meaning there is nothing that's going to stop us along the way at common points to help us choose like 22.5 or 45 degrees. We're going to have to line that up, hard to do with the camera, and tighten it down, and also take a little measurement down here to make sure that we are set on that angle if we're doing something very precision. Now there is a bevel stop here that's going to stop us at 0 degrees when we get back. We're going to test this saw out, make sure that we are at 0 degrees. As you can see, this is a stamped metal shoe. We do have a cut line for 45, a cut line for 0, and we also have measurements across the front. You can get a edge guard so you can make straight cuts if you want to. That is an accessory. The blade guard is going to be plastic. This is going to be metal along with everything here. The rest of the saw is basically plastic. You do have the 4 different places for your batteries to connect. We can go over that a little bit more in depth. Your Allen wrench to take the blade on and off is shorter, but I think that's probably because they do not want you to over tighten this arbor nut. This bolt here is going to be what's also going to help you with the kickback control, because the tighter you put this, the less kickback you get. But this is a 4,300 RPM saw, no load. You have 2 7/16 inch depth of cut at 90, 1 3/4 at 45. So it is less than your higher end circular saw depth of cuts. Let's take a look at if this blade's square, if we have to adjust our bevel stop. When you pick this saw up, make sure you also grab a speed square. Not only can you use this as a guide for cutting, you're also going to need to have this for setup. Now, you want to make sure that you have this guy not sitting on a carbide, but sitting flat against the blade and fairly square there. I'm going to put a light back here. See that light shining through? That means that we are absolutely nowhere near a 90 degree cut, which would be 0 degrees on that. We are going to have to do some adjustments to get there. So to do this, make sure there's 0 battery in here. Obviously, we want to be safe. It's easier to do if you have a vise to put this in or something else to hold on to. Again, we just did this and we were significantly off. I know that's hard to see on camera, but what we want to do is adjust this guy. So this is a 7mm locking nut that's on here. We're just going to loosen that guy up, and we have to come back. So with that done, we can just screw this guy back, loosen this up, bring it up a little bit more, which you can see doesn't line up exactly with the 0. We are getting closer. We have to go further. Now the issue we have at this point is there is no more adjustment. We are as far up as we can go. And we are still not there. So this saw, technically, from the way it came from the factory, is not going to allow us to get to a square cut, mostly because of this fence here and it's hitting the motor. So we got closer, but we are still 3/4 of the way actually from getting to where we need to be. I'm just going to take this guy and just make it touch, just so we don't lose it, and then tighten this back up. It's sad because I was really hoping with this adjustment that we were going to be able to get to where we need to be, but let me see if I can show you here. We are still nowhere near where we need to be. Wish we were, but we're close. Let's go see how it cuts. Okay, we have a typical 2x6 here. We're just gonna cut in this area, make multiple different cuts, but what I want to do is show you the difference between the cuts on a normal 2 amp hour battery, which I believe a lot of RYOBI owners have. We have a 2 amp hour high performance one. This is the new one. It actually says high performance, not HP. Then we have a 4 amp hour battery that is the new high performance. And then we have the 6 amp hour HP battery. This is technically the old high performance battery that's out there. We are going to start out with a 2-pin 2 amp hour battery. And if you were to purchase this and say, I'm going to use the standard batteries I already have and I don't have anything good, this is how it's going to go. Not bad for a cross cut, right? But let's put on the 2 amp hour HP or high performance battery. Significant difference right there in how fast it cut and how much pressure I'm feeling on this. Here's a 4 amp hour. Now you can still see this wood move, and that's due to the lower 4,300 RPMs, and when I'm pushing, it's not cutting as fast as I'm pushing. 6 amp hour HP. So in this little test, I don't see a huge difference between the 4 amp hour and the 6 amp hour, but as I've seen before with other tools in the HP line, there will be a difference as we start to move up. And obviously, if you're just making these tiny little cuts and very, very few of them, you could go with this 2 amp hour HP. I would highly recommend against it, but it obviously did work. To take that test a little bit further, we're going to do the same thing, but we're gonna cut just a half sheet of 1/2 inch OSB. We'll do the same battery test here. You should be able to see it and hear it a little bit more. So let's go at this. That was the standard 2 amp hour. Let's move up to the 2 amp hour HP. This has all of the pins. And that was me pushing a little bit to try to show you guys that this one is a little bit better. Let's go up to the 4 amp hour. Huge difference in feel on this end, 6 amp hour. Again, no problem for the saw. 4 or 6 amp hour is definitely where this saw lands, even cutting this little bit of sheeting. And realistically, this is not that big of a cut. This saw also comes with a dust collection system on it, which is very interesting. It doesn't seem to pick up the dust like a normal saw would. And a normal saw would actually push this dust out sideways. This is definitely not. And you'd see a normal saw would dump the saw out on one side or the other. This one's going to try to pick it up from the back. And as you can see, if we were cutting this sheet like this guard is going to stop us from getting any sawdust up inside. We would actually have to do a full depth of cut to get in here, and then even then we're limited to what's going to get in there. So we're going to push the saw blade all the way down through this, which is not exactly how you should cut. You should always have, you know, 1/4 inch showing through the bottom. And then my Bosch vacuum here doesn't fit inside. There's some ribs that are around it that are not working. So we're going to make do with what we have, which this should give us a little bit better seal anyway. With this guy connected, everything all the way down, let's make a cut and just see what happens with the dust. I'm not sure you can see it, but I'm still getting hit with a lot of it in my face. So let's just make an adjustment here so we're up a little bit like we should be cutting and see what happens with the dust. That was definitely a lot worse. So if you're going to use this, you have to have this saw in the full depth of cut position for sure, and that's kind of at a minimum. And this guard is still going to stop you from getting most of the dust in here. So I find it interesting of how they did that, and I just want to take a look at what is actually inside the vacuum since I cleaned this out prior to. And this is how much dust we collected. It's hard to see, but a couple pinchfuls out of those 2 cuts. That's it. 6 amp hour battery, HP, full charge, going in full depth of cut. It's not about the speed, it's if it can do it without issue. We'll make 2 full depth of cuts straight across. We're going to look for how much does this heat up and if we get any cutouts along the way. We're not going to push too fast. We're just going to make sure that this saw can make it through it and do everything that it should be able to. Yeah, we're pushing it a little bit for DIY, but let's see what happens. So close. And just like the last saw that we checked out, that was very similar to this. This sawdust is bunching up on the inside. Very normal, probably what stopped us less than 1 inch from the end. Not bad power, it was a little bit slower, no real big deal. Let's just give it a try one more time. Absolutely nothing feels even remotely warm. Maybe the motor just a hair. I can feel that it's warmer than anything else, but the battery here, completely cool. Let's go one more cut. So about 1/3 of the way in, I could feel some heat right about here starting to radiate off something. The motor, I'm getting some air past. I'm thinking that most of what I'm getting is just the sawdust that is collecting up in the system and not coming out. And that's mostly because we really have no place for it to go. It's trying to come out down here, but it's not really set up for long cuts. This is really set up for those quick cross cuts. Let's see if we can finish this. So you see how we're actually getting sawdust. It's pushing back, hitting this handle here, and then coming down, or it's pushing back behind it. We're not getting a lot of it piling up back here, and there's really nothing left behind the saw other than when I had to restart, which behind the saw is where we had our sawdust collection. So you would expect a lot of it to come out here, but this blade guard is stopping it. So not a great sawdust collection system, and there's really no way for the sawdust to get outside of this blade guard. Let's finish. The good news here is this battery is not even close to warm. Tool motor is slightly warm, but really nothing that you would even call hot at all. I mean, for that part, I think it did excellent. There's some decent power here for the guy at home who wants to do some stuff. All right, so here's my take, and this is coming from a guy who uses a little bit higher end tools when I'm working. So first, if I have the opportunity to use dust collection, I go right straight for it. I love to have something that's pulling the dust away and not getting it all over myself or all over my lungs. Wood can be an irritant, so that's important to me. This dust collection system, flat out, it doesn't suck. And it didn't get enough wood inside the vacuum to even show that it even sort of works. So I wouldn't buy this saw at all for the dust collection system. 2, the dust extraction system away from the blade didn't work well either, but I don't know how many DIY people that's going to affect. If you're cutting OSB, you're taking it in the face the whole time that you're cutting because it's just bouncing around and coming right up at you. That's not, I mean, that could be normal to a point. But if you have a good extraction system, most of it will come back out the side and lay down on the wood, where this stuff just seems to bounce all around. So I've got it all over. I feel like I have it all over. That is what it is, a DIY saw, right? The next thing that I'm kind of about is that I can't get a 90-degree cut. Is that going to affect someone long-term when they're framing? No, but man, I like to have that nice tight cut, and I couldn't adjust it to the point where I could get it. So that sort of burns me. Is it going to affect everyone? I don't know. You can kind of put that into perspective. I'm also a trigger snob. This trigger actually isn't bad. And let's see if you can hear it. So when I pull it back, I get to the point where it's going to break, and I get a lot of creep, but then it breaks. And when I come back, I'll let you listen. It has 2 clicks on the way back. Not a big deal. Again, I'm being a trigger snob here. Trigger is very good compared to a lot of other RYOBI triggers on the market, so most people won't say anything about it. This is one of one. I have an extra snap at the end when I let loose that's really weird, and I don't know where it comes from. That's something I look at. The bevel adjustment here has no detents for 22.5 and 45. Well, when I put it on 45, it does measure out as a perfect 45. You have to take the time to get it there and not have that one little click where it just stops you slightly to say, hey, you're at 45. So it's a downside that I see on a lot of other saws in this category. It's also plastic in that. I see that too quite a bit. And the shoe on the bottom is stamped, no big deal, but at the same point, I mean, you have a place to run guards and stuff through here. I don't really like that because especially in here, things can move up and get in your way and get you caught. I would rather see a flat bottom. It's me personally, but they've designed it for other things to fit in here and work with you. And if you're going to use those things, better for you. The tool in the back will stay. You can see it goes into about here before we start to get pressure, and then you have to push it in. So I don't see that tool coming out anytime soon. It's not magnetic as we've seen in others. The arbor stop is the same that we've seen on almost all circular saws. It's just right on the other side. Handling it feels good. It does have this little notch back here. I'm not going to go into that. All the HPT tools do. It doesn't bother me as much on this saw because of the only one way to grab it, and I can adjust my hand up and down to fit that. I've said a lot of negatives about that, but the positives about the saw is that there wasn't a ton of difference in cutting light duty cuts between the HP or high performance 2 amp hour and the high performance 4 amp hour. So it's definitely noticeable, but I was super impressed on how well the saw ran on a 2 amp hour battery. You can't really, or maybe you can, and I never would. I would never take a 2 amp hour battery and throw it on my Milwaukee or throw it on my Metabo and say, okay, here we go, we're gonna go make a couple cuts and we're just gonna get by. This did it for most of you out there if you're just making a couple cuts, and I stress that. Like if you're, oh, I'm gonna make 4 cuts, no big deal, and I'm okay with it being slow and I'm not gonna push it, you can do it. That was kind of cool. There wasn't a huge difference between 4 and 6 amp hour, which too was kind of cool, but then that makes me think, okay, where is our cutoff with amp draw here? And you know, when we started pushing it in the deep wood, that is when we started to see the 4,300 RPMs, which is no load RPMs, which is slow. Stock for most of these is going to be 5,000, and that might be for the upper end, but that's where you're seeing a lot of the new DIY, high-end DIY come in at 5,000. So that was a slower cut, but we didn't have a ton of cutouts unless, yeah, there were a couple, but that's going to be normal on that kind of a cut with this style saw. So power-wise, I was fairly impressed with what we have on a stock blade. Now, if we wanted to go up and switch up blades and make this saw perform better, we can get better blades. But is that what the RYOBI guys are going to do when they go out of the box? Is grab it? I don't know. You can let me know that in the comments. I just wanted to see what it could do with this stock blade. And then if we have a competition in the future, we can put 2 different blades on, 2 different saws, see what they'll actually do. But if you take and go in the description and click on that other link I have down there to its competing saw, you'll see the same tests that we did in similar style and be able to kind of see who kind of wins in that game. But we can always put them side by side and take a look at it. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Goods, bads, there's no perfect tool. So if you're in this RYOBI line, you're looking for a better performing circular saw, this is going to do it if you have the higher end batteries. According to the box, they give you a lot of specs of, you know, it's going to do better cutting a 2x12 by 30% with this and that, and a lot of caveats there. So make sure you have the better batteries, you're not pushing things. Sometimes blades can really improve the cuts of your current saw along with a little bit bigger battery. And if you have a normal saw at home and you're using this 2 amp hour and you're like, man, I need something bigger, maybe you should also think about the cost of upgrading this battery when you do go to something bigger, because overall a 4 amp hour or one of the 6 HPs or anything like that that you can find that's much larger is going to last you longer and give you more power in 90% of the tools out there and not get as hot. So not getting as hot means the physical battery will have many more charge cycles and also last longer. I have just mumbled on for a long time about this, but I think there's a lot of good information there. I hope you can grasp what I'm saying about this saw and say, hey, there's goods, there's bads. What do you want? What are you looking for it for? And just hone in on what works for you and just let all the other stuff go, because at some point what I need and what you need are not the same thing. But everything's out there and on the table. This thing, my opinion, shouldn't even come with it. It is what it is. Dust collection on this simply didn't work. Either way, I appreciate your time. Give me a like on this video if you would. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, have a great day.